Kyle and 3 of his friends decide to go out camping on a boys' weekend. Now, they're only about a 5-mile hike off of the main road, but it's just them, their tents, their food, their drinks, and their fire starting gear. That's it. Now, about 11 o'clock, one of his friends, we'll just call him friend number 1, decides that he's going to walk alone back to the cars. He wants to go back into town to get more drinks. Now, the only thing that's going to sell them anything to drink at 11 o'clock at night is probably a good 15 to 20 miles away. So they all tell him, don't bother. We'll just do it tomorrow. But he says he's going to do it anyway. So Kyle gives him his good mag light and they all say good luck as friend number 1 heads back toward the cars. Now, about a half hour to an hour after friend number 1 has left, the 3 remaining campers start hearing these noises that they describe as a cross between an injured bear and somebody pretending to be Bigfoot. So they think it's friend number 1, so they call out to them, but nobody answers and the noises go away. Now, after about another 15 minutes or so of nothing happening, they figure their friend had actually left or that maybe he'd passed out in the woods or something. So they figured just to be safe, they would all hike back to where the cars were just to make sure that their friend had made it. And keep in mind, friend number 1 has the good mag light. So the other 3, all they have between them is like one old lantern that's not very bright and a phone to light their way back to the cars. Now, after about a mile or so, they start hearing those noises again, and they call out again, but again, nobody answers. Instead, they start hearing some branches snapping and some rustling going on in the direction of their camp. So at this point, they decide they're going to split up. One person, friend number 2, is going to head down to the cars and make sure everything is okay down there. And the other 2, Kyle and friend number 3, are going to head back toward camp and figure out what's going on back that way. So friend number 2 takes the lantern so he can find his way to the cars, which leaves Kyle and friend number 3 with nothing but a cell phone to guide them through the forest back to their campsite. So they head off. And after about a mile or so, when they should be back toward their camp, they can't find their fire. They can smell it, but they can't find it. So they walk around for a little bit longer until they finally do find it. And what they find is that the campfire has gone out. And it's not that it had just burned out. There aren't embers there. It has actually been put out. Somebody doused it with water. Now, needless to say, Kyle and his friend were a little freaked out because they didn't put out that fire. Who did? They haven't seen anybody else around. So super freaked out and not being able to start another fire because their fire pit was flooded out, they decided to pack up and nope their way out of there. So they packed everything up, everything except one thing, which we will get to later in the story, and started hiking their way back toward the cars. They get about a mile or so, right about the same place that they had separated from friend number 2 earlier when they heard those same tree snapping, rustling noises again. But instead of being back at the camp this time, those noises are coming from right behind them. So they just started booking it straight through the forest, and they ran for about 2 miles through the woods until they finally got to a trail. Once they hit the trail, they felt a little safer because they knew they were just moments away from finding their cars. But when they finally got to the cars, they noticed that 2 of their 3 cars were missing. So friend number 2, who was supposed to just go check out the cars and come back, he actually ended up getting in his car and leaving. And of course, Kyle and his friend had no idea why, so they're thinking their best course of action is to do the same thing. They get in the car, and once they do, they realize the car is kind of off kilter a little bit. They get out of the car, look at the tires, and one of the tires has a knife in it. They pull the knife out. Kyle realizes that's his knife, the thing that was missing from his campsite that he didn't even know was gone. Now they're really weirded out, but they can't drive anywhere. So they just start walking the highway on the way towards town until friend number 1, coming back from the beer run, actually stops and picks them up. At which point Kyle just kind of said, screw my car, I'll go back for it tomorrow. Now, it took a little time to get all 4 friends back together to figure out what happened that night. But what they did piece together is that friend 1 left just as he said he was going to, went into town, flirted with the cashier, got some drinks, and on his way back, picked up Kyle and friend number 3. It's friend 2's story that really freaked him out. Friend number 2 says that as soon as they split up and he was heading back to the cars to check on the cars, he heard noises as well. He turned, and in what little moonlight there was, he could see the silhouette of a man standing there with a knife. And they stared at each other for about 30 seconds until the other guy with the knife starts booking it straight at friend number 2. At which point, friend number 2 says he jumped in his car and got the hell out of Dodge. Now, Kyle says he doesn't know exactly who or what to believe, but he hasn't been camping in that spot since that night. He says he just can't quite get over the idea of how many times they may have been within feet of that 5th person.